Welcome back. Earlier this week, we sat down with Congressman Scott Peters, the Democrat from District 52. We talked Mueller. We also talked about a package of bills he's pushing called the Climate Playbook. Will it score bipartisan points in Congress? Take a listen. Congressman Peters, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Okay, so here to talk about your Climate Playbook. But first, a lot of stuff happened in D.C. last week. The Mueller report coming out. Also now there has been talk of impeachment by some members of your party. I'm curious, where do you stand on impeachment right now?
Well, we're going to have hearings. The hearings are inevitable after the Mueller report, but I'd keep a couple things in mind. One is a lot of Democrats were elected in the last election to get things done for the American people, particularly around health care and around the economy, giving the middle class a chance. Whatever we do with these hearings and the Mueller report follow-up, we should not get sidetracked from accomplishing those very important objectives. We are going to have hearings in the committees of jurisdiction, judiciary, intelligence, and so forth. I'm not on those committees myself. But I think it's very important to follow up on this Mueller report. We were all sort of waiting for this to come out, to see what happened. We've seen some really serious things, 10 different instances where the president tried to obstruct justice, much more serious than Watergate, much more serious than Richard Nixon, which was a break-in of a headquarters. This was a break-in of our electoral system by a foreign adversary. And the politics are complicated because the Republicans don't seem to be concerned about it. They think, well, if it wasn't a crime of conspiracy, we're not going to say anything about it. So we're really called on as part of our constitutional obligation to follow up on this in Congress. I hope it will be bipartisan. And to say that it will lead to impeachment today, I think, is a little premature, but it is not off the table.
Let me ask you, okay, it's not off the table, because, I mean, listen to the details about, especially, I mean, the particulars about Don McGahn and you know, the president leaning into the Mueller investigation and trying to have McGahn fire Mueller. But you haven't taken impeachment off the table.
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. We had a conference call among Democrats on which the Speaker Pelosi was on. She's very opposed to starting out at that point. But if you read the Rashida Tlaib's impeachment resolution, all it says is that the Judiciary Committee will start to look at whether impeachment is warranted.
When this takes up so much of the news cycle and political capital, talking about the Mueller investigation, I mean, what does that do for other legislation? I mean, right now, I mean, you've got a climate playbook that you're pushing. I mean, how does it interfere with those talks?
Well, as I started out by saying, we got a Ways and Means Committee that has nothing to do with. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. We have Appropriations Committee. We have the business of Congress to do. I hope the press will pay attention to that. I can't control that, but I know that my job is to work on health care, to work on climate, to work on making sure that the middle class has a shot on student loan repayment. Those are the things that I'm working on. We have to continue to do that, and we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah. All right. Well, and so for folks that haven't heard about this playbook, give me the basic parameters here.
So, I think I've been working on climate for 30 years, and even in Congress, I've been working on it for 6 years. We really haven't had a chance to get a lot to the floor because Republicans have been in the majority. They haven't been that interested in the issue. But we've been working on it. And what I started to see was a debate New Deal, which was very aspirational. But even if we pass the Green New Deal that says we should do all these things, we actually have to enact legislation, right?
And to be fair, like the Green New Deal right now as it stands, it is their parameters. It is an agreement to move. It's not like particular legislation.
Right. And the Green New Deal has really gotten caught up in politics.
Yes.
So because it's general, which is its strength, it's also been defined by Republicans as no cows, no cars, no planes. Ridiculous. I said, let's get past that. Let's actually look at the bills we could pass on all parts of climate change, whether it's pricing carbon, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's getting carbon capture, negative emissions, all those technologies. We've got bills on those things. Let's get them out. Let's start working on them.
I noticed that a lot of the bills, at least the first part of the playbook, they deal with cars and electric cars, pushing towards electric cars, also carbon emissions. something that I know resonates huge in your district, something that resonates huge in California.
Well, I mean, the United States could learn a lot from California. California's been heroic on climate change since Arnold Schwarzenegger first set up the goal of 33% renewable, where we've blown past that. We're headed toward 100% renewable statewide in energy production by 2045. We're supportive of zero-emission vehicles. We're supportive of transportation strategies that offer people an alternative to their cars. And so I'd like to bring that kind of discussion to Washington, D.C. And that's the idea of the playbook. There's a range of things that any member of Congress, any committee could look at and say, okay, we can get on board with these. Let's start talking about these. I have one bill on carbon capture, essentially taking emissions out of the air, that's supported by people on the left, but even by Liz Cheney. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we can get passed that could have an impact without the political bickering. And if we want to pass things, we have to remember that it has to be bipartisan to pass. It has to be bipartisan to. So we have to start having a conversation about how to really move forward.
Are you finding that folks are open to that bipartisan discussion?
I am, and if you talk to them individually, I think you've seen Republicans come away from this notion that climate change isn't happening or that it's not driven by human activity. In fact, the EPA administrator, Mr. Wheeler, came into my committee and said he understands climate change is happening. He understands that human activity is a big motivator of that, or a big factor in driving it. So we can have something to talk about. I've had my colleague from West Virginia, coal country, Mr. McKinley, Republican. He and I agree that research, boosting the federal investment in energy research could be profoundly have a profound impact on climate change and on how we produce energy. And we agree on that, California and West Virginia. So those are the kinds of things I think we have to start doing. And we really don't have a lot of time to waste on yelling at each other. It's time, if we're concerned about climate, which we are, if we know it's an existential threat, which it is, we really have to start getting to work.
Our thanks to Congressman Scott Peters for stopping by. Next up, he says he's taking the climate playbook to the new Democratic caucus next week. He'll be looking for supporters. Okay, now after the break, that tragedy at Notre Dame. One of my colleagues witnessed it firsthand.